Welcome back to Combat Mission Final Blitzkrieg for the wrap-up of the Metal on Metal turn-by-turn series. This is definitely more of an audio experience than a visual one. Limbo and I are basically having a chat about the game and answering some of the questions. There are a few screenshots and fancy maps with arrows in the background. If you've watched the series, then you probably have a reasonable idea what and where we're talking about, so you're not necessarily missing anything if you just listen. So, a huge thanks to Limbo for playing the game and agreeing to talk about it afterwards, as well as everyone who submitted any questions. Without further ado, away we go.
Yeah. So I guess congratulations on your victory. We'll start with that.
Um,
Did it pan out the way you expected to? So, what was the plan? How did it go? Did anything catch you by surprise?
yeah, thank you for your magnanimous congratulations. I think I was lucky for some RNG bits. I'm not sure. I haven't played a huge amount with Pershing, so I didn't really know what to expect, but I feel like I think in some cases they overperformed. I think what we got, and it'll probably come up later, but when you actually got to have a proper engagement with kind of more than one of two of your tanks versus the kind of two Pershings on my left flank, your right flank, you kind of at least killed them fairly rapidly. So I think it was you were probably just unlucky with some stuff, but thank you very much for the congratulations. In terms of American plan, so essentially I had kind of a similar plan to you. So my overall concept of ops was a screen on the left, so that's where my deployment zone was. I figured if you did a big push, as my reinforcements came in, I'd be in much better place to feed reinforcements to my left flank than to my right. So I went for quite a heavy right kind of early on in the game. Also, that's where the objectives were, so it made sense to do that. As for my overall plan, essentially that was it. Was to do a screen on my left, heavy flank right, and just try and roll up where there's a series of wood blocks. So looking at the map, you've got obviously Autobahn West objective, so you've got the little hamlet just to the east south side of that, or right hand side of that from my deployment zone. And then Rhyme Camp, and you've got those two wood blocks just between Rhyme Camp and Autobahn Ost. They kind of dissect the map or the board or the area quite well. So actually around where Wendhoff is quite isolated from the rest of the map. So I kind of figured if I can dominate that corridor, I can use that to flank and push up on the right hand flank, which obviously is what I was doing kind of when we negotiated our ceasefire. I was in the process of kind of rolling up that flank. Did it work? Yeah. I think everything pretty much went to plan. I kind of went into the thing with like three key considerations. So the first one is obviously the assumption is the Shermans were going to be less capable than the Panthers and Tigers. So I wanted to be really aggressive because I wanted to be close and to force you to have to maneuver to potentially give me opportunities for like flanking shots and things like that. But on a similar vein, I knew the Chaffies would be more capable than the Panzer III. I suppose to preface this, assuming it isn't in the introduction, but most people know. So for this battle, we had a 1-to-1 force ratio. So I had a Sherman for every Panther, a Pershing for every Tiger, a Chaffee for every Panzer III, and a half track with infantry for every half track infantry you had. And I knew that, so I knew exactly what you had. So I knew my Recce was going to be more capable than yours. My mediums were going to be less capable, and my heavies I was a little bit 50-50 on because I've never really played with Pershings. much, other than when the Downfall DLC very first came out. I had to play around with them. So I assumed that they'd be at least as good as a tiger or a panther. So yeah, that was my kind of key considerations. I needed to be really aggressive, and my more capable recce really facilitated that. So as you know, I just threw my recce forward. My goal was to get as far up the board as possible on that kind of long right hand flank. The theory being, if you were turning out of your deployment zone to push towards your left, my right flank to where the Chaffies were going to be, you'd be opening up side shots to my follow-on of Shermans and the first wave of Pershings. It didn't quite work like that because obviously we had the surprise.
Yeah, I was going to say you did
up.
really, really well with the Chaffies, even though there was an incident right at the start. Where there was a panther with the advance guard that wasn't really supposed to be there.
That was quite the shock. Well, I suppose I literally just finished saying I knew exactly what you had and when you were going to have it, but we did have quite a little bit of a shock there.
A little snafu there.
Yeah. So where the Chaffies ended up was actually behind where I wanted to be. Like my intention was to be taking like Auerhof and like past Rime Camp, past Wendhof, which I did kind of get up on the right hand side. I managed to get Chaffee into that really far up hamlet. But yeah, I was actually less aggressive with the Chaffies than I had originally intended, but we kind of achieved the same concept of ops that we'd kind of been aiming for, which was basically to force your first wave of reinforcements to have to shift to deal with my recce rather than maneuvering to kind of enact whatever plan it was that you were trying to enact. So recce phase kind of went pretty much bang on to plan. The second kind of consideration and kind of core concept that I went in was that we had a lot of stuff, and the more stuff that arrived, the less we were going to have freedom of maneuver. So with movement becoming increasingly restricted over time, I wanted to be kind of as decisive as I could be and aggressive as I could be to maneuver those initial elements. So that my first wave of reinforcements, I went really heavy right because I had visions of like a troop of tigers or a troop of panthers just pushing down the autobahn and cutting my force in half. So I wanted to have sufficient firepower on both sides of the road that I could essentially punish any attempt to push either side. So my first platoon of Pershings, I split off into individual vehicles. I sent one far left, one far right, and split the others kind of equidistant through the map. So like every angle of possible attack, I had at least one Pershing covering. And then the similar thing with my first, I think I got 2 troops of Shermans initially. And I sent one troop right, one troop left to start that screen in action. And then the infantry, I just committed entirely the entire one platoon to the big wood block outside Auerhof on my side of Auerhof. And then the other 2 platoons, I pushed one towards Rime Camp and one towards Wendhof. The idea being I had bazookas, and I wanted to essentially force you to attack me, because I knew small arms wise you were obviously again more capable, but I had slightly better anti-tank because I had bazookas and you didn't have Panzerfausts. So essentially my plan with the infantry was to take that big wood block outside Auerhof and create this kind of 150 meter bubble that you couldn't really go near without risking getting bazookaed, and then use the other 2 infantry platoons to seize Rime Camp and Wendhof and force you to have to potentially come in and clear them with your own infantry in a close range fight that would benefit me rather than you with semi-auto rifles and no LMGs. That never really happened, but I think it probably would have if it had come down to it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have a plan for my infantry, so I kind of looked at the map and saw a lot of open ground that the half tracks would get nailed in, and a lot of wood blocks that had big signs on saying "Drop your artillery here." So, kind of a tough one for the infantry.
100%. I think it was like you're kind of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, and especially with that consideration of the longer the game goes on, the less maneuver you're going to have, particularly in something like a half track. That's why I was just like, right, I'm just going to commit the whole company. It literally, as soon as they spawned in, they all got fast movement orders to start moving out. Because I just figured they'd get to where they needed to go, and they'd spend most of the game sitting there dodging artillery shells, which is pretty much what happened. And then other than that, my third consideration then on the topic of dodging artillery was the timeline for fires was like 10 plus minutes. It was really slow. So I kind of discarded fires as an aggression, like as a reactive thing, like you would playing like Shock Force 2, and seem like, oh, he's occupied this position, now I'm going to shell it, and I focus on using my fires as like a shaping thing. So pretty much all my fire missions for the whole game were all like long harass missions. So that initial fire on Rhyme Camp was because I'd seen something go in there during the recce phase. So I was like, well, I'm just going to drop a harass mission and just try and kind of keep you from from rushing like a platoon and half tracks in there. And then similarly, that smaller wood block to the north side of Auerhof. Yeah, that was just a harass mission. That was just on a long harass mission. And then there was one or two kind of actual strikes I did on the kind of vaguely L-shaped wood block to the east side of Rhine Camp, where you took the Tiger and the platoon of half tracks in the back. And I was able to get an angle for somebody with a radio to call in a fire mission. I think that was the only like heavy mission I called in for the whole game. Everything else was just like long harass missions, just to be like, I don't want you to go here, so I'm just gonna make it so it'll suck for you to go through there.
Yeah, that seems like the best use of the artillery on this map, because like there's quite, we both had quite a lot of artillery, but it also had a lot of tubes, so you could use it up really fast, and there was like an hour and a half of gameplay.
Oh yeah, like the I think I had like 6 barrels of 2 sets of 6 barrels of priests, each with like nearly 500 rounds. So even the harass missions were like 6 rounds landing every kind of 30
which
seconds.
Is like it's not.
It's not nothing.
It's technically a harass mission in like combat mission terms, but like you don't want to be sat under that.
No, not at all. So it's so yeah, even those harass missions were actually quite effective in the end, I think.
Definitely controlling like movement and just being like, nope, not going over there.
Well, I'd kind of identified for the infantry, I'd kind of identified 2 possible axes of advance. So you've got the L-shaped wood east of Rhine Camp, push through there and then into the wood between Rhine Camp and Wendhof. Or on the other side, you've got the big wood with the gap, like the little road through it, with that little one then just to the north side of Neuhof, and then push over into the big one on my side. So those are the 2 kind of infantry avenues of advance that I'd kind of identified. So I was like, one or both of them will be getting shelled periodically for the whole game, just to discourage kind of a dismounted infantry attack, which I think kind of worked, because I suppose again I should probably mention now where we're recording this. I have the benefit of I've watched the full series at this point, so this has been recorded in the end of February. So
you know what happened on the other side.
Yeah, it's like I've seen kind of quote unquote live what your thought process was, so I kind of have a little bit of a sneak peek. And in hindsight now, I know I said I'd look into record, and I really regret not recording, because as I was watching it, I found it really fascinating to be like, I was thinking almost the same thing at almost the same time, and it would have been really cool to watch mine back. But unfortunately, I didn't get my life together sufficiently to set up OBS and
it's a
everything
lot
else.
of work. I mean, it takes long enough to play combat mission, like in a like play by email, but when you have to spend like 15-20 minutes on each turn because you're trying to explain what you're thinking,
Yeah.
it takes even longer.
And that was kind of it. So those are the three kind of key considerations. Is I assume my recu more capable, mediums less capable, heavies probably at least even. The longer the game went on, the less I was going to be able to move around. So I needed to be really aggressive early and just get where I wanted to be and force you to come to me. And fires weren't going to be very reactive, so I needed to kind of be proactive with my fire. So essentially all of that led me down the plan of I need to be really aggressive here, and I need to get up in your face as early as possible and force you to kind of try and attack me where I can choose the fights. And then once I can set the conditions for an advance, I do that and I start pushing up that right flank. So I can use those wood blocks kind of around Ryan Camp to screen off your deployment zone and, and kind of other likely positions. And yeah, that's what I did, and that's what I was kind of in the process of doing when we called the ceasefire.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense from my perspective. I feel like my plan was basically just to go forward, make contact, and see what happened, and then play off that. And as it turned out, the kind of mirror match kind of element of the scenario, where it's like 5 lights, 20 mediums, 20 heavies, that didn't really work. I don't think that created a particularly even fight. Because I'm biased because all my tanks are on fire right now. But like the Chaffee outcompeted the Panzer IIIs, I think, by like a quite significant margin.
Oh yeah, the I think the only damage, one of the Chaffies had its gun barrel disabled by a Panzer III, and other than that, they were basically just target practice. I think it's the nature of combat mission of like.
Yeah, well, I think
it's not
this
a
is
rock paper
the
scissors game, is it? So you can't just be like, well, this guy has 5 light tanks and 10 medium tanks and 10 heavy tanks, because when you're simulating different armor values and penetration values for different guns and muzzle velocity and all of the stuff that CM models, it's not enough. Like even that, my rifle squads all had bazookas, so really you should have had Panzerfausts if we were going to be 1-to-1. Or Panzerschreck, sorry, if we were going to be 1-to-1.
Yeah, but then the Panzerschreck's better than the bazooka, right? Because it can fire an extra 50 meters and it's got a chunkier warhead.
Exactly. So
you just can't. It's not a sensible way of balancing a game like Combat Mission.
No, I would agree. Yeah, and even something like that, the Panzer III is there by virtue of the fact that it's a light tank, and you're kind of like, yes, but if you want to be more like capability, actually, you probably should have had like a short barreled Panzer IV, or maybe even a long barrel Panzer IV. To be honest, is like, the Chaffee has the 75mm gun, and they were doing work obviously when they were very plucky and shooting at tigers and panthers. Obviously got more balls than brains, maybe, but they were getting work done, and they were achieving at least delaying you and forcing you to react, because it's like, well, I can't really turn side on, even though they've only got.
Yeah, I mean it's only a 75, but it's basically the Sherman's 75. So like, no, I'm not gonna. This goes back to your 3 points, right? Which is, well, the Chaffee's right up in my face, So I've lost that freedom of maneuver, at least for a little bit, because I need to kill that Chaffee that's in that farm right up in my face on my left before I can do anything on my left. And then, like,
Yeah.
we kind of saw later on when I decided to just, like, send 4 tanks off to their deaths, trying to cross over to the other flank. I really needed some stuff over there. Or it would have been helpful. One of the reasons I didn't send stuff over there in the first place because I didn't think there were any good firing positions on that hill. But I could have found that out by putting a tank there and working it out that way instead of just eyeballing it, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's I think sometimes you're not you as in you personally, but you're just as in like generally. Um your bird's eye view that you get in combat mission is almost a detriment because in reality, if you were looking at that on a 1 in 50,000 map, you'd be like, okay, I need to cover this angle, I need to cover that angle, so we're going to deploy some troops here and some troops there. And they don't know until they get there whether actually that's a decent fighting position or not. And then
Yeah,
when they
like
get there, it's like, well, we need to set up here anyway, so we just need to figure it out.
yeah,
Which when you
is a
can
thing.
zoom across in a
Yeah,
3D camera and be like, oh, okay, actually, this kind of position, this position kind of sucks. So I'm just not going to send anyone over there.
yeah, but
But it means
sometimes
you
it's
don't
better
have
to have a
anyone over
kind
there.
of yeah, like sometimes it's better to kind of have the capability there, even if you don't end up like using it. Even the threat of it can be, can influence your opponent.
Well, that's like, and again, it's a great example of the kind of hindsight that I've seen both. Is like for that right hand flank, I had that Pershing up on the hill. That obviously caused you some concern for basically the entire game. And to be fair, he did kill 2 tigers. I'm kind of looking at the final turn now while we're talking, just to kind of jog my memory. He did kill 2 tigers and a panther and 5 infantry, but for most of the game, that Pershing was pretty much the only thing on that flank. So if you had have been able to mass 3 or 4 panthers or tigers and push, you probably would have at least been able to M kill it or K kill it, and push that flank. So it's one of those things of like even the psychological thing of, oh well, there's a tank on that hill covering that valley. I don't really want to drive down that valley. But the reality is sometimes I think you just need to suck it and see, which is not ideal, but the
Yeah,
breaks, I think.
like there's I kind of I feel like I kind of had that during the game. Like it started off with the first half is me playing it like I'm playing Shock Force or one of the modern ones, where it's like, one tank covering this angle is enough. So you end up with like this web of interlocking positions, and then it turns out that one tank isn't enough because everybody was losing the 1v1s with the Pershings.
Yeah, I think that was well, like I said, that my first wave of that initial Pershing platoon was split over the entire map because I was like, essentially my assumption was that Shermans are just targets. So my workhorses, like everything I achieve, I have to achieve with Pershings. So that first platoon of Pershings, I just spread them over the whole map. So if you had have massed at any single point, you'd have been able to overmatch because I'd have only had 1, maybe 2 Pershings, depending on angles and kind of weirdness and CM's ability to draw line of sight.
Yeah.
But like I'd have probably had 1, maybe 2 Persians at a push, supported by a handful of Shermans. So it's the interesting one of, would that have been enough? Like if you would have gone really aggressive really early, would that have been enough to break through? But
Yeah. I mean,
hence that's why my whole plan was based on get in your face and force you to have to react to what I'm doing, because I was pretty sure if I let you set the tempo, I was going to lose.
Yeah, I mean, my sense of it all, I think pretty much all the way through, even when I actually got round to being like, okay, I just need to get as many tanks together as possible and just try and punch it, was, okay, maybe I'm going to get forward. Um, I'll knock out some tanks and get forward, but you'll have more tanks, and then, all that's happening is I'm just getting further, I'm just getting slightly deeper into your position, where the angles are going to go bad for me at some point, and everything's going to get knocked out. So there's like a kind of, I guess I kind of felt like even if I could, I needed to do a lot more damage to set the conditions to move to advance, and that never really happened.
I think we almost went into it with like the opposite mentality, because my theory was if I can be really aggressive early and I can nab the objectives, I can force you to have to attack me, and then I'll degrade you in the process of you attacking me. Whereas you've approached it from the thing of I want to degrade him and then I want to take the objectives.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Whereas and I was like, well, I want to take the objectives and just sit there and be like, well, you need to come to me, and at which point that means you have to expose yourself, and I can shoot at you with Shermans with shorter ranges and bazookas and all of the stuff that I had that wasn't really suited to the long range engagements.
Yeah.
It's an interest. It's kind of a chicken and an egg thing, because if I think, especially like you said when you said that platoon on your left, my right flank, and the whole platoon got knocked out in like the space of 1 or 2 turns. I think you were really unlucky there. To be fair, like you're talking, over a kilometer range, like that Pershing on that hill is a regular -1, so he's not even like super impressive.
Yeah, not a special tanker, just the.
He's just like a bloke. I think most of my Pershings were actually regular. I think all but one were regular, and most of them were -1, or I think one was even -2. I had one like veteran one. I think you were just really unlucky with the RNG there. Of he was nailing moving vehicles moving left to right at over a kilometer, and he did it, basically 3 shots in a row, boom, boom, boom. Which I think if we were to run that turn 10 times, I don't think he'd do that 9 out of those 10 times.
I think he would.
I think so?
I think, yeah, I think it's kind of. This is kind of one of the things that I got out of it, which is like, in some elements, because it's late war, right? It's 1945. It's almost like it's on the cusp of Cold War. So when you get the the Pershing, and it's got, I mean, it is. I'm going to offend all the tank aficionados here, but it's almost a Pershing, right? Or at least almost an M48. Sorry, it is a Pershing, isn't it? Almost a Patton. There we go.
It's like a little baby Patton.
Yeah. So when you've got like a 90mm high velocity gun, and you've got the optics to support it, then you can reach out and touch a target at, a moving target at a kilometer. It's not particularly difficult. Whereas
I think not so much that they couldn't do. I think more so just the efficiency with which he did it. Because again, with benefit of hindsight, I haven't watched your turn, and I saw you do the math on, okay, they're going to be exposed for just over 1 turn. I think him doing it in that kind of 80-second gap that he had to do it in was probably the thing that wouldn't have happened. But I don't know, maybe I should go back and run the turn a couple of times.
We probably have different opinions on it because we were on different sides of the Pershing firing the shells.
I wasn't the one watching my platoon disintegrate.
I think that was the battalion No, was it? I think it was a company commander. I can't remember. But yeah, I remember looking back at the turn later, like looking at the end state and looking at it from the Pershing's position and tracking left, and I think I saw one tank which is like vaguely hull down, and being like, God, I got really unlucky. And then I panned right, and there's 3 tanks completely out in the open. It's like, oh yeah, it was those ones. Oh, okay, this makes sense now.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, I mean, just like
it wasn't a great engagement.
Yeah, look or not, it's a kind of a misjudgment of, can I cross this ground safely? And if it was, Fortress Italy in like 43 or Normandy in 44, then might well have gotten away with it, especially against like earlier Shermans and things like that. So
yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, I always something I found really not annoying is probably the wrong word. It's like jumping between combat mission games and time spans can be really off-putting because your mental model just like can't catch, or my mental model just can't quite keep up sometimes.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, I had it completely, and again, having watched your playback, there were Shermans spalling and bouncing shots from Panthers, and like my brain just couldn't. I was just sitting there being like, why are they still alive? You guys are supposed to be dead.
Yeah, that got me.
And they weren't even I had a mix of. I had some jumbos. I think each of my Sherman platoons had like 1 jumbo, and then one had 2. But the vast majority of my Shermans were just up armored Easy 8s. But I was just not expecting anything other than the jumbos to do anything other than die as soon as they expose themselves.
Yeah, well, I think that that speaks to some of the other, when we're talking about the light, medium, heavy tank, like abstraction kind of failure. That somewhat goes hand in hand with the idea of like how available some of these vehicles are. So like I don't think, or I mean, we're talking to the internet. The internet will correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like even at the end of the war, there weren't like whole companies of totally up-armored Shermans hanging around.
No, my understanding is that Americans were running a kind of. I know for a fact the British were doing what was 1 in 5, is like each troop had a Firefly.
Yeah, I mean, some units had got to be like 1-to-1 Shermans to Fireflies by the end of the war.
Oh, I didn't even realize they had that. I think the Americans had a similar kind of ratio of 76s to 75s. So I think the jumbos was like 1 per platoon, or was it 1 platoon per company or something? Was the ratio for jumbos?
Yeah. I mean, I think if they're the assault tank with the 105, then there's like a couple attached to each company HQ or something like that. I can't remember the TOE off the top of my head.
Yeah, the assault tank was definitely it sits in the company HQ.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one thing where obviously my Orbat was ahistorical, because I had all up armored Easy 8s or jumbos with 76s, which I also understand were quite rare. The jumbo with the 76.
Yeah.
So I think I had a very ahistorical Orbat, and like my infantry platoons didn't have their mortars and things like that, so it was not really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a totally ahistorical Orbat because it's 1945. And I have tanks that have petrol or diesel.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably more tanks on this, several kilometer square area than were active in most of West Germany by the May 1945, by the time Pershing was in the field. So
probably that's potentially more Pershings as well, actually, or all of the Pershings. But yeah. And anyway.
So to kind of rewind to the original point, American plan. That was the American plan. Be really aggressive. Screen left, push right. seize the objectives. So I've got the points I've got the terrain points, and then build up kill points by forcing you to take the terrain points off me. Was kind of the plan. Did it work? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't. I think if we were to re-rack and go again, I'd do pretty much exactly the same thing. I think that the planning considerations I was working under were pretty correct. It's like I other than the Pershings, I needed to be close to you, and I needed to force you to maneuver against me to try and open up angles for shots and things. So I think that was the right move. Any surprises? Your really heavy right push, my left, your right push was I didn't expect you to do that. I expect you to basically mirror what I was doing and push down my right, your left. So that kind of caught me by surprise, hence why you probably saw me kind of shuffling stuff around in the background to try and meet that big armoured advance. And that was my biggest surprise, because I expected you, like I said, I expected you to kind of do what I was doing, and a lot of the manoeuvring you were doing early was telling me that's what you were doing. I'd never actually got eyes on your big build-up of tanks on my left until they pushed.
Yeah, they pretty much came straight out of the deployment zone. But I can't tell you how much it made my skin crawl to have so many tanks in such a small place. Just ugh. You know, like it just feels like it breaks so many rules.
Yeah, but
I mean,
you
sort
can
of
see that from the big pile.
It killed 2 of the Pershings, I guess, eventually.
Yeah, it was an interesting. I think it wasn't so much the initial push, where if I was going to offer feedback, it's the once you've pushed, you then need to turn side on.
Yep.
To push the objectives, which is that's why it was unexpected, because I expected you to push either down the autobahn or further, again, my right, your left, past the little wood block just to the east of Autobahn Ost, and kind of along that line there, so at least then you'd be front on to down that little valley on the right hand side, which meant you could push front armor on into the objectives without necessarily having to go side on to any concentrations. So that was why I was a bit shocked. I was a bit surprised by that, because I was like, I didn't really understand why you were doing what you were doing. For then the second phase to be, and then they all turn their side armor on and then drive towards the objectives.
Yeah.
I thought your objective might have been to push into my deployment, but by then everything had deployed, so I was like, well, it doesn't really matter if he takes my deployment.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was mostly a reaction to just that kind of the sense that I wasn't basically I think almost all of the tank combat in the game as a whole was actually head to head. There wasn't a lot of flanking shots going on.
No, I think we got a couple of CM jank spotted from across the map and engaged. But for the most part, it was like I think we were fairly successful in like using the terrain as best as we could to screen out any kind of weird flanking shots.
Yeah, I mean, but the problem for me with that was that it rapidly turned out that the Panthers and the Tigers couldn't stand up to the Pershings when they went head to head. So that push on my right, your left, with the big armored wedge was basically right. I need to get as many tanks as possible in a compact space to get as much firepower as possible on the smallest number of allied tanks, and just saturate them with fire in the hope that something will get through, all the Pershings will be so upset, then they'll back off.
And to be fair, it did work for the most. Like you were breaking through. I had to
worked up to a
maneuver
point.
against that. I had to deploy my reserve, so I had about half a troop of tanks in reserve that I had to deploy. So it was working.
Yeah, but like you say, is I was completely aware of the okay, so you've gone forward. Now you need to turn, and you either need to turn right and go for the deployment zone, or you need to turn or go straight on and go to the deployment zone and go past the edge of the wood and get schwacked in the flank, or you need to turn left and expose one flank so you can be head on to those Pershings on the other flank. So yeah, it was a bit 1918, a bit like Ludendorff just saying we'll punch a hole and then we'll see what happens.
I think that also, to be fair, and again, having watched the playback, you were a little bit on the back of the YouTube tiger of it's like, I could redeploy my entire force and take 10 minutes to do that, and probably should do that, but also that won't make
but
for
also
very
I don't want to
viewing.
make you all waste a week watching me redeploy, so
Yeah, so
Leroy
I
Jenkins.
think if we were playing this just the two of us without it being recorded, you might not necessarily have made the same decision.
I mean, I'd
or
like
maybe you
to
would
think
have,
that, but at the
hated
same
the straight up
time,
the middle, right?
yeah. To be fair, it was originally intended to go in behind a smokescreen.
Yeah.
But the tank calling the smokescreen in got knocked out, so it was
Which, ironically, I think was one of the weird CM spotted across the map engagements, which ended up being one of the most decisive engagements of the game.
Yeah, I don't know. It might have been. I feel like he got hit in the front by one of the Pershings.
Maybe.
I can't remember. Again, it's 2 months since the end of the game, and probably 3 months since that incident actually happened. So I don't know.
But yeah, that was kind of my biggest surprise, and I did have to deploy my reserve to plug the gaps. And to be fair, all but one of the Pershings on that flank are pretty much out of the fight. So 2 were knocked out, one's lost its gun, the other's lost its radio and its optics. There's only one actually in the fight, along with one Sherman, and everything else on that flank is dead or dying. So you almost punch through, but it's then the
there's always that kind of like
of what happens after you've punched through.
Yeah. I mean that goes hand in hand with the classic. I mean this isn't even particularly a combat mission thing, is it? This is like a military history thing. Just this kind of like, well, if you just try a little bit harder, you might get some results, or you might all die.
Well, that's it exactly. It's like you don't know that there's not another troop of Shermans, and also it's like, it's one thing for me to sit here and be like, oh well, this stuff on the left hand flank, there's like 1-2 operational tanks, and everything else is all beat up to fuck. Sorry, don't swear. Let's swear. Everything on the left flank.
If you want.
Everything on my like that. I have 2 operational tanks on my left flank, but I'm looking at the game, having withdrawn and me having pushed up, and I have that mixed troop of Pershings and Shermans I was pushing right up the autobahn. That's another 5 tanks, another 2 and the 105 and 2 more Pershings that were in the center. So like there's 7 tanks I could have pushed left if I had have needed to. So I'm probably being disingenuous there, to be fair, to say, oh, you almost broke through.
Yeah. Well, we are actually going to go through some more of these questions at some point.
I think we're still
we're kind of touching on lots of bits of them.
Yeah. American plan. that was my plan. Yes, it worked. My big surprise was aforementioned. So I think that's probably.
I think my big surprise was the Shermans not instantly exploding, and the Pershings being a lot harder to kill and a lot more effective at range than I was expecting. So I was kind of counting on being able to pick off the Shermans and at least go toe-to-toe with the Pershings, and neither of those things really happened. So that's kind of where it fell apart for me. Moving on to like the actual map, do you think there was a terrain advantage for either side? I want to say that you had an advantage, but I would say that. I feel like you're right. Once you got across the Autobahn, you had some better dead ground to exploit to get to the objectives on that flank.
I think on the right, I think it was a bit mirrored, because I would say you had better terrain on the left. Now, to be fair, there are no objectives on the left. So does it matter that you had better terrain on the left? Potentially not. I think I had quite a good staging position in the dead ground behind Wendhoff that I did funnel all my infantry into, where you had the lone Schwimmwagen and a driver OP.
Yeah, the CM scouting detachment.
And I was able to mass my infantry there and then push into the objectives. And obviously I had that little hill that the Sherman sat on.
Yeah, I mean,
or not the Sherman, the Pershing.
There is an element of like, I can't think of the word for it. So if I had maybe been more decisive about how I'm going to use my artillery, I could have put a harassing mission on that woodblock leading up to Wendhoff that I knew you were going to use to stage infantry in, and just say, just leave it there for the entire game.
Yeah, so that was kind of going to be my follow-on point to that of, I would say yes, I had better terrain. I don't necessarily know. Again, easy for me to say because I won. Do I think it was decisive? I don't think so. I think what it led me to do is to do some really obvious things that maybe if you'd use your artillery in a different way, you could have mitigated a lot of, like, that position where the Pershing is up on the hill again is really obvious. The infantry staging wood block is really obvious. So I did consider trying to avoid using a lot of that stuff because I knew it was really obvious, but it's one of those things of.
Well, the other thing is, like for me, if I start arching that woodblock, you just don't go in the woodblock, and the infantry stays in the half tracks, and they're perfectly safe, 500 meters past it, and they can just bypass it if they need to go forward. So
yeah, it's
a minor inconvenience, unless I get lucky and the mission comes in when you're dismounted inside it.
Yeah, I think it's I would say I had, definitely for the infantry fight, I had a terrain advantage. For the armored fight, I don't necessarily know if I did, just because, yes, I had that little hill at the back of the valley on the right hand side, but I think if you'd have managed to deploy something on your left a little bit earlier, maneuvering into that position probably wouldn't have been very pleasant. But like we've just said, the Pershings were kind of winning the long range duel, so I probably would have had the chops to take that hill even under fire. Although you never know. Maybe.
I definitely think that the terrain, if there was any advantage for either side, that was kind of just a minor footnote beneath the advantage that the Pershings had.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I had the terrain advantage. I don't think it was decisive, though.
Yeah. which that kind of goes on to one of the community questions, which was from Mr. Cloudy Day, saying, would swapping sides on the map have made any appreciable difference to the outcome? Probably not, based on
No,
what we just said.
I don't think so. I think if we were to swap maps and keep the same forces, I'd probably... Well, I'd do what I templated you to do, which was, again, screen right, push left. You'd need to be very snappy in how you deploy on the left-hand side. It probably would have been a case of smoke up that hill position and use that to just maneuver into the open and just accept that that is going to suck, but throw more tanks at it that I can kind of knock out, which is what I thought you would do.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how much I really wanted to have smoke shells for the tanks for this.
Yeah,
because relying on the artillery, which has a 10-minute, 10-minute call-in time, and you can't use it for anything else in that time, is such an inferior option to just having a tank fire a smoke shell at the exact place that you want to be smoked up.
I suppose that's would you say then that that's a weakness of kind of your plan, which was to kind of be reactive without having fires which are suited to that kind of plan? Would you say then that was a big issue for you?
I think all along I intended to use artillery on the woodblocks against infantry rather than armor. Again, there's like some combat mission inflexibility going on. Like if I have a 6-tube self-propelled howitzer platoon, it offends me to use that asset to smoke up one tank. It just doesn't compute for me. Like I want to use that on something else.
I suppose my devil's advocate there, though, is you don't necessarily know it's one tank. It's like it's the way I think of it, and the way I tried to use my artillery was like you're not. The artillery isn't doing anything; it's enabling me to do other things.
Well, yeah, that was the thing, right? Which is that there is a kind of quite a good portion of the game where I'm just kind of like in a loop with the artillery because I can't decide what I want to use it on. And if I had like a plan or a better idea of what I wanted to commit to, then that would have, maybe it would have had a greater impact.
There was a really good comment on one of the videos actually that I've since incorporated into my lexicon, which is doing nothing is doing something.
Yeah, a decision to do nothing is still a decision.
Yeah, that's the one. It was really good. It was like that actually was very profound, I thought.
Yeah.
But it was I think that was probably, if I had to pick one big thing that I would try to do if we swap sides and I played the Germans, I think one thing I tried to do differently than you did is try to kind of be more proactive with my fires and try to use them like that, use the smoke missions to enable me to do more things rather than just kind of kill some infantry, which were like relatively
not inconsequential. Yeah.
If I could be so arrogant as to provide some feedback.
That's fine. I feel like I kind of knew at the time, but did it anyway, which is classic combat mission.
I do that all the time. Or like I'll be doing something and my plan will be working, and I'll be like, "This is great, my plan is working," and then I'll deviate from the plan, and I'm kind of sitting there and I'm like, "What?" Even in my own head, I'm like, "Why are you doing this?" Like,
yeah,
like it was working, and now you're not doing it anymore, and now it stopped working, and you're sitting there with shocked Pikachu face.
Yeah, it's weird. But I mean, linked into this, using assets correctly. This was a scenario, so we had a preset force. If you could bring your own toys to the party, what would you bring? What would you not take, or what would you change?
Oh,
Oh, which I should add is follows on from another question from Acrid Proximal 8848, which was, if you're going to do this again, what units would you swap? E.g., Tiger 2 for Tiger 1, etc.
For me, I would probably say I'd go for a more historical Sherman mix, and I'd take some 75 Shermans, and I'd use the points that were freed up for things like TRPs, and maybe get my infantry mortars back and things, because I felt a little bit, if it did come down to infantry fighting, that I wasn't I literally just had riflemen, so I
So
wasn't
like
really in a position to accept an infantry fight. And also TRPs are always good.
Yeah, like the US Armored Infantry platoon TOE has 2 more half tracks, each of which has another bazooka in. And it carries a 60mm mortar with even more ammo than the usual, and two Browning 30 cals. So that's like considerably more firepower.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that would be the only major change I'd make. Is like, yeah, I'd go for a more historical Sherman mix and use those points for complete infantry platoons and
TRPs.
TRPs.
Yeah, TRPs all day long in every wood block on every objective. Every random lone tree in the middle of the field, everything, everywhere.
Well, even that because, like I said, because I kind of knew what I wanted to do with my artillery, because I went into it being like 10 minutes is too long for me to strike things, so I just want to enable stuff. So I'd probably even 2 TRPs on the because as I said, I'd identified kind of 2 axis of advance or 2 infantry axis of advance, and be like, cool, TRP on that, and I'll just sit doing harass missions for the entire.
Yep.
I just loaded up the last turn, and I have roughly 237 rounds on one battery and 255 on the second. So I still have 500 rounds of artillery.
I'm not even
the end.
I mean, I don't have it up because I'm doing the recording and stuff, but I don't even want to look at how much ammunition I had left. I feel like that would just be depressing.
So I've still got like 500 rounds of artillery. I think they started with like, I want to say 488, but I don't know how. Like around 500. So I'd only use half my artillery.
Yeah, like the priests carry a ridiculous amount of artillery, of ammunition rather.
And that was my guns were firing for basically the entire game at one thing, or mostly on harass missions, but like they were firing pretty much. I called in back-to-back fire missions for the entire game, so the only gap was when I was adjusting missions. So, and I still had half my ammunition left. So, if I had TRPs, I'd have probably used a bit more than that. But I mean, I know it's one of the things of, because it's a quick QB, and I'm always a victim of not thinking outside the box enough when it comes to quick battles in combat mission. So I know we talked briefly on Discord before we did this about what we'd take, and you just said you'd take a bunch of planes.
Yeah.
Which I never even think to take planes, because I'm so used to the modern ones where it's like, I'd rather just have an Abrams. Why would you take an F-18 that misses half the time when you can take an
and costs like a tank company?
Yeah.
Whereas the P-47s, strafing P-47s kids, 8 50 caliber machine guns that fly around for 30 points. So
yeah. So that would probably be a shout as well.
yeah, about 20 of them.
Yeah. Just one forward air controller and a
not
Jeep.
even an unrealistic joke amount that you could take. Like, I think you can get 6 and the FO to control them for the price of a Panther. So yeah.
So thinking inside the box, yeah, realistic Sherman mix, better infantry capability, and even just a handful of TRPs. But again, I'm coming from the position of my plan worked, so I'd take stuff that would kind of make my plan better. But you, Mr. Plan, didn't work. Presumably, you have
or
thoughts.
didn't have much of a plan. You see if that's the root problem. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I had too many tanks and not enough supporting stuff. So, apart from obviously bringing the at this point mythical Luftwaffe to the battle, because nothing upsets your opponent like having their half tracks strafed with 20mm cannon.
Yeah, that's
even if it doesn't do anything, there's so much psychological pressure of, oh my god, the sky is watching me. It's almost always worth it.
Well, like we were talking about the terrain advantage and stuff, and how we think, both of us think we kind of mostly made fairly good use of the terrain to make sure most of our engagements were kind of head-on armor facings. Like, even if it's a P-47 with 50 cals, if one of them strafes your Panther or your Tiger or your Pershing or your Sherman, they're going to wreck the radios and the optics and everything else. Even if it doesn't kill the tank, it's going to make it significantly less capable.
Yeah, exactly.
And they don't care that you're hiding behind a wood block. They're just coming to shoot you
sometimes
anyway.
They don't care if you're hiding in a wood block.
So
again, thank you, crazy combat mission spotting system.
So it's one of those things of the ability to, well, as I said, as I was maintaining a reserve in my rear area for a lot of the game. If you just had, a massive big target area just over my whole rear area, they probably would have got a couple of strafes in, or I was moving teams and stuff around in the rear area. Even one or two of them getting sniped out would have thrown a crimp in the plan. So yeah, it's for a relatively low amount of points.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of psychological pressure. Plus, in a less, I guess, less sportsmanlike way, it kind of it can encourage a work burden on your opponent. Like, oh, I have this platoon in my rear area that I'm using as my reserve, but it might get strafed, so I better move it around every turn. It's just making more work.
Well, that's it's whole more OODA loop concept, isn't it? I'm making you do things.
It's a bit more of a pain in the arse in the moderns, because you have drones for directing artillery, and it's just if you leave something still for 2 minutes, it will get blown up by 155s. And it's so annoying that you have to manually move your tanks every turn.
And maybe for CM3 they'll give a maneuver box of, you can just be stay inside this area but just randomly move around.
Yeah, just run around in circles.
It's
inside this area. Yeah.
I suppose the corollary to that, though, is if it was a QB, you'd never leave home without some form of AA, just to honor that threat of the other guy having.
Yeah, but this is where it gets into the the QB dynamics, which is I'm going to take planes so that you take AA, which means you're using more of your points up.
Yeah.
That you can't use for other stuff. So
but then you get the quad 50 cal's favorite food, which is infantry in the open.
Yeah, or if you're the Germans, you have the quad 20s, which is that building where you're hanging out at the end of the battle. Good night.
Be a shame if that were on fire.
Be a shame
and
if that
filled with
became a
holes.
Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
But apart from air power and the obvious TRPs, mortars, on-map mortars, for that, even direct fire application of smoke. Maybe splitting the artillery batteries down into sections, so 4 3-gun sections instead of 2 6-gun platoons.
Yeah, it'll definitely give you a lot more flexibility.
Yeah.
And I suppose if your plan was reactive, the more flexibility you have, the more effective that is.
Yeah. Assuming I can make a decision.
Yeah, but like again, you get into the what if of if you had four assets to fire with, because again, it's a CM-ism that everything has to shoot at one thing. So if you had four options,
yeah, like it's
suddenly,
less of an investment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like suddenly it becomes like, well, I'm not shooting 50% of my off-map artillery at a thing. I'm shooting 25% of my off-map artillery, so I can afford for that to not be perfect.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of tanks, I don't know. There are a lot of people saying, would you be better with King Tigers, like the Tiger 2s? And I haven't tested them against the Pershing, so I don't really know. In theory, it's got better armor than the Tigers and the Panthers, and it's got a better gun than both of them. So it should do better. But again, I'm very against taking Tiger 2s because they're Tiger 2s.
Yeah, it's just on principle. It's like they've broken down or fallen through a bridge.
It's even more ridiculous that they're actually on the battlefield. I mean, I guess I could go all out. I mean, there's Sturm Tigers in there. I think it's the one with the 128mm gun, not the one with the 320mm Storm.
Big rocket launcher thing.
Yeah, with the Bane Blades hull gun.
Yeah.
Both of which are just ridiculous wastes of time and effort.
You have to admire the Germans' optimism that they thought they'd need assault guns that late in the war.
I think they only ever used them once, and that was on some people who couldn't really fight back. But that's another story.
Stay on topic.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean the Sturm Tiger with the 128mm gun. I said the Jagd Tiger that I'm thinking of. I think it might be the Jagd Tiger. That could have been a bit of a game changer because that probably could go head to head with the Pershings and knock them out, assuming that it wasn't like immediately tracked or got bogged down in a patch of mud or something stupid. And even just having one that can open, like if that could open up the left flank, then suddenly boom, we're in business and we can move on the objectives.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But yeah, so there's lots of stuff. I would have a almost completely different force makeup, I think, if I got to pick my own stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. I think I'd have a very similar force, but again, aforementioned, my plan worked, and also I very much think inside the box. So I'm like some infantry and half tracks, some Shermans, Bob's your uncle.
Yeah.
What else could you possibly bring as an American player in World War II?
Greyhounds. I like the Greyhound.
I love the Greyhound. I kind of wish I had Greyhounds instead of
Chaffies.
Well, maybe not instead of Chaffies, but
I don't know. Greyhounds, maybe that would have been Nah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, it would have been an interesting one for the recce phase, because I get it's like tank on tank, but it would have been an interesting escalation to be like armored cars first, so like Pumas and Skidivida 22s versus some like Greyhounds.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly where I was going. Like it would have been interesting to have a more realistic recce engagement where you have like the armored cars duking it out. Not the Puma, because it's like I think they made like 50 of them or something stupid. It's just like a far
It's a
more,
War Thunder meme,
yeah,
isn't it? It's
far
like,
more famous than it has any right to be, based on what it actually did.
but no, that would be cool, I think. Or even the the dismounted recce element. You had shrimp wagons and I had jeeps.
Yeah.
But I think a regular US recce element has like jeeps with 30 cals, but they don't have dismounts, so you have to either get in the jeep or out of the jeep, and then if you have an interesting question there of firepower versus do you want to
Stealth.
go into the woodblock
Yeah.
or do you want to run around with a 50 cal?
Yeah. So yeah, that
It's
would
always the
be.
second one.
What was the second one?
It's always the second option. Run around with the 50 cal.
Yes. Yeah. Really want those Wimix out of Shock Force 2 with the
Yeah, Wimix would be.
Yeah.
Or is there? There's no SAS jeeps in with like the Vickers Ks and stuff, is there?
Yep.
I don't think.
Yeah. There's
Really?
some airborne jeeps from the Market Garden module which had the dual Vickers K for the passenger.
Oh, I might need to throw myself a little QB together against the AI and just run around like pretend I'm Paddy Mayne.
Yeah. So yeah, the forces would be different if we got to pick. I think we can just get on with the. We've actually been doing this for about an hour now, I think. So I'll actually just run through the other questions.
So that's what your last one is. What did we learn about armored warfare?
That was mostly about how everything was head to head.
Yeah.
Oh, so we sort of covered it, but I'm not. I feel like that's not very historically accurate, and it's kind of a function of having a comparatively small map compared to a real life engagement with far more tanks than there ever would be.
Oh yeah, like the force density. I mean, it's by virtue of like any war game. It's like because you're stuck to the table. You have, and I think you talked about it a bit in your playback. On my left, your right, that little random wood block that we had the little recce fight in, and then you push that infantry platoon up, and you were like, you said about, I'm kind of cheesing it by just driving up the board edge, when in reality there would be another battalion over there doing their stuff, and they'd start shooting at you.
Yeah, exactly.
But because we're playing on a board, there's nothing.
It has an edge.
Yeah.
Which, like people have told me when I've raised it previously, this is a real world problem when you have exercises, which is that when you have a military training exercise, it has to take place in a confined space.
Oh yeah, 100. Like I've had exercises. I've been on exercises where there's major roads moving through the training area, so you'll like tactically be moving through, and then everyone has to stop, put on like high vis, or vehicles have to put on like flashing orange lights to drive across the main road to then redeploy tactically on the other side, and you're just like, great. If they didn't know we were here, they definitely know we're here now.
Yeah, at least the Americans have a great big desert that they can play in.
Yeah, it's but it's unfortunately the reality of it's an abstract thing of maybe we should write a rule next time to be like, if you go within X distance of the edge, you just randomly get shot at. It's like roll a d6.
I mean, there've been some proposals
saving throw
for like
to be shot at
how to fix the problem, like putting mines down the edge.
But to be fair,
then you just get a new edge. So
yeah, it's like your edge just moves in 100 meters But to be fair as well, it's like where you push down, like that route was like, if you kind of extrapolate the map that is there, looks somewhat similar for probably the next several hundred meters. That is the route you take anyway.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to tuck in behind that wood block as much as possible. So, I didn't think that was cheesy even when you were doing it. At no point I was like, oh, that's a bit rude. It's like, no, that's exactly what I would do, and I was doing on the other side.
Yeah,
I
I
was
was
pushing.
going to say that there were some Shermans behind that wood, and there was a scout team in that wood. So
Yeah, so it's like I don't think that was like sometimes you get it where you're like, okay, that's a bit cheap because
yeah. I mean,
you should
it's
do that.
quite rare. I mean, this is one of the reasons why with like when I play combat mission against other people, I try to have as few house rules as possible and just accept, the possibility of cheese because it's not really that minor, or not really that major, really.
Yeah, it's just my biggest one I always stick to for QB is obviously don't shell the other person's deployment zone in turn one.
Yeah.
And I always try to do typical values for stuff because I've encountered before if people crank like a firefly up to elite and you put your tiger, you expose your tiger for half a second and it just gets shot like 3 times by this +4 elite firefly and you're just like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Guess I'll just go.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that was fun and engaging for both of us, I'm sure. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah. This is where the Luftwaffe comes in.
Exactly.
But,
the Luftwaffe comes
but
and
yeah.
just messes.
So yeah, there's we might not have got a historically accurate result in terms of the combat because we're playing in a confined space, and that's just something we have to live with, I think.
I think for the most part it was okay. Like the force density of these, as we said, was way too high. But
the flip side is that, well, what the scenario is trying to do is have a matched, is trying to orchestrate a fair fight.
Yeah.
And war is about orchestrating unfair fights. So,
yeah, exactly. It's like if you're fighting fair, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I think that gets the direction I was going on with the what did we learn about armored warfare is this idea that the technical matters. So we kind of covered that earlier. Like we got 2 heavy tanks on the field, the Pershing and the Tiger 1. And just because they're heavy tanks doesn't mean that they're equal.
Yeah, it's like the fact that the even I would say I would argue even more extreme example of that is the Panzer IIIs and the Chaffees.
Yes,
yeah. It's like they're both light tanks, but there's 20 years of development between the two of them. The Panzer III was developed in like the late 20s, early 30s.
I want to say late 30s.
I think it was in service for the start of the war, so it would have been developed. Panzer III to Wikipedia 35. It was the start of design. So there's the guts of 10 years between the 10 years of some of the most radical changes of armor ever.
Yeah, exactly. So the technical details are important and they matter. And that's a thing to bear in mind for simulations and modeling. If you turn around and say, well, I've got a T-80 and that's a heavy tank, versus whatever a Striker MGS or something like that, and that's a wheeled infantry fighting vehicle. Well, the T-80 is going to win every time, right? Well, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Because the details matter.
I would agree. It's. I'd be tempted to sit down with the quick battle editor and work out what Battlefront think the points values of our respective forces were, because I don't think they will be.
I can't. Part of me wants to do that, and part of me is can't be bothered. If I'm honest, but yeah, I suspect we didn't have the equal quick battles force value in this.
No, I don't. I would agree. I don't think we did.
Definitely not the rarity, but that's something else entirely. So Yeah, the first half of Mr. Cloudy Days question was, and we're getting back to the map. Do you think the battle would have played out differently in the scenario's original spring foliage? So, because this was the winter turn by turn, we jazzed things up by putting snow on the ground and making it winter. And that obviously means there's no leaves on the trees, and that might have opened the sightlines up a lot more.
To be honest, I don't actually know, and I haven't played enough winter stuff in CM to say with great confidence how much difference it makes. I imagine it must make some. But I know we did get some kind of weird spotting angles.
Yeah. I mean,
But you kind of do with CM anyway. My answer is I don't really know.
Yeah, I feel like we might have had less crazy cross map spotting, but at the same time, it's really really hard to quantify whether what you're getting is because you know that tank is looking through several leafless trees, or because combat mission is rolled like a 12 or something.
Yeah. I would say it probably did make some difference, but probably not enough.
Yeah, if anything, it probably actually made it easier for tank combat to actually happen, because definitely something I tend to find is you find a really good position for your tank, you roll up to it, and then you realize that the turret is completely hidden behind like a branch or something. So the driver and the radio operator are sitting there going, "Holy shit, there's a tank," and the turret crew are like, "I just see green."
Yeah.
So yeah, it might have actually been. We might have had slightly less combat that way.
Yeah, I that makes sense to me.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see. I'd say we'll see. I don't know. We're not going to test this. Spanky99 says that 12 Pershings feel like a bit of a tall order for Panthers and Tiger 1s. Do you think there's a realistic path to victory for the Germans in this battle with the forces given? Well, if the Allied player is a potato, then yeah.
I think if you approach it the way I was approaching it with my Shermans, of I'm gonna take casualties, it's gonna suck. I need to get to grips, get up close, and try and mass. I definitely think you can win as the Germans. You just need to play like an Allied player with Shermans versus Panthers. Is kind of, I think that's the path to victory. It's like 12 Pershings are very capable. Is it impossible? I don't think so. I think as kind of as has come up again and again, it's a symptom of it's a 1-to-1 thing of we both have the exact same number of heavies, mediums, lights, etc. But I do think there's a realistic path to victory for the Germans. You just need to very much change your mentality as the German player, and you need to play like an Allied player in 44 with Shermans versus Panthers instead of how you would normally play as a German.
Yeah, and the trick is to figure this out before you start the game and not halfway through.
Yeah, that would probably be better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that it depends a lot on it's the Allied players to game to lose, if that makes sense. Like they have to make bad decisions, for that the Axis player has to exploit, rather than if the German player just tries harder, they'll win. We were just talking about the technical element, the technical element doesn't really care how much effort you put in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's again, it's the similar thing of if you're playing CMFI and it's 1942 or yeah, 42, 43,
43.
and you're on Sicily and you're fighting like Panzer IVs and you've got Shermans, or Tigers which have turned up by then as well. It's like you need to be smarter than the German player is. The 1-to-1 makes that a lot harder because obviously traditionally you would expect to have several platoons of Shermans versus one platoon of Tigers, or maybe even a pair of Tigers.
Yeah.
Which certainly makes that easier. I think with the German players, it's like you'd have to really try and leverage your overmatch in the medium and be really hyper aggressive versus the mediums. But then, yeah, I completely agree. I agree. It's the German players, or it's the Allied players' game to lose.
Yeah. I mean, on the flip side, I never got that smoke barrage in. I guess it's not impossible that that big armored thrust could have closed the distance. And then, up close to the Pershings, I would expect it to be a very different ball game. But yeah, again, we talked about that before as well, which is okay. So you've gone through, and now we're in the ... part of the plan before we get to profit, which isn't a good place to be. So, yeah.
Yes, unfortunately, the smoke then dissipates, and then you need to.
And then it's like,
turn.
oh shit, no. Yeah. Yeah, that kind of rolls into DanCan XP311, who asks, how would you have balanced the battle for the German player? I don't really know. I think that it's maybe changing the Tigers for King Tigers would balance it out. But again,
I mean, like we said, it's already such an ahistorical scenario. The fact that 10 King Tigers have arrived in the same place at the same time isn't going to make it that much crazier than it already is.
No.
But
yeah, I mean, exactly how much more balanced it would be, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it would be like crazy different. Well, I mean, I'd need to. I've never fought King Tigers with Pershings, so I don't know how they match up technically. Like we said, that technical aspect is such a game changer of it. It might be a thing of, well, they're just more target practice. It's like it makes no functional difference because the 90mm gun just goes right through them, regardless of whether it's a Panzer III or a Tiger II.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm pretty sure the 90 will bounce. If it's the same 90 that they have on the M36 Jackson, because I've put them up against Tiger IIs before, and it does. It's not fun for the Tiger II, but it doesn't penetrate the front, at least. But I mean, this is going in the direction of like 1-to-1 balancing, though. Like, there might be other ways to balance it asymmetrically for the Germans. Like, if this wasn't a media engagement, if this was Allied attack, Germans defense, that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, because you're forcing me to come to you, which is what I was kind of doing.
Yeah, but you were doing it in a vacuum at the start, right?
Yeah, true. It's and I think it's also the nature of meeting engagements don't really happen, and like in real life, two equal sized forces don't just run into each other. Like it doesn't happen.
It's a gameplay mechanism.
Yeah, so it's it's one of those things where, and the kind of similar thing we were saying, like with the technical stuff of like when you're using a simulator, you can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes. The simulator that CM is wanting to be. You can't treat it like a game of Warhammer where it's like everything is equal because it's designed as a board game and everything can damage everything else, and as long as the dice go your way and you're somewhat competent in what you're doing and how you're doing it,
Yeah, like
you're in with a chance to win. It's like sometimes in combat mission, your anti-tank guns get knocked out and they still have tanks. You're just shit out of luck at that point.
yeah, yeah.
It's not meant to be balanced. It's not, the game isn't designed to be balanced.
Yeah, like it's not an artificial construct. It's a representation of an environment where everybody wants to live, and they're trying to make sure that they do. So that there's no mileage in trying to be fair about it.
Exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure you can balance it with the existing forces. But you start messing with it, and yeah, sure, mines, lots of mines.
I think it would definitely be interesting as a. It would definitely be interesting as if you were to redo the scenario as a German defense, and you were to like slightly reduce the size of the German force, or maybe even just keep the same German force. So as we've said, as we've said, the Pershings overmatch everything else, so you can afford to lose more stuff, even though it's 1-to-1 in terms of numbers. But flip it up so the Germans start a lot further forward.
I mean, it depends, right? Like, if you're moving forwards and you're forced to expose the flank armor, then the Pershings can't tank the damage, right? So
yeah,
you get within 200 meters of a wood, and there's one plucky Panzer Grenadier with his Panzerschreck, and that's it, lights out.
Game over, man.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. I kind of want to see. Part of me wants to do this in Cold War. I guess you could feasibly, if you did it with the Canadians, you could have Leopards versus like Leopard 1s versus M60s or M48s, which is sort of like the tank grandsons fighting it out, I guess.
Yeah, and definitely make the infantry a lot more relevant as well.
Yeah, ATGMs all day, every day. But yeah, that'd be something else entirely, I think.
I think that would be. So while we've been talking, I've been sitting messing in QB editor. So obviously veterancy, etc. I haven't done. I've just done the stuff we had.
Yeah.
And both forces are coming out at about 15,000 points.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
So
guess it was just me then. Okay.
The Tiger is 350 to 400 points depending on veterancy, and a Pershing is 300. Again, 300. They're actually less. What? Right. So yeah, they're looking about 350 to 400 as well, depending on veteran. So a normal, regular. So yeah, regular, like completely bog standard Pershing is 338 points. And a completely bog standard Tiger 1 is 365 points.
That's probably the. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that the Tiger 1 has thicker side and rear armor than the Pershing.
a bog standard King Tiger is 410.
Yeah.
So make of that what you will.
Yeah, always worth with the interjection here that the QB battle formula for the units remains an impenetrable mystery. Looking at you, Stugs.
Yeah, I don't understand why Stugs are more expensive than Panzer IVs, despite the fact that
It doesn't even have the turret.
I also think it's a combat mission-ism of everyone's really good at aiming for the dead center of the other vehicle, which when that's where your gun is, sucks, because in my experience of Stugs, the very first round fired at the Stug immediately takes out the barrel,
Yeah, every
and
time.
they're M killed. So it's like, cool, I get maybe one shot from my Stug before it's just immediately either blown up or taken out of the fight. So, but I think that's a CMism of the tankers always aim for the perfect dead center of the tank, which is, where the gun is. So
Yeah. That is a whole rabbit hole I don't think we're going to go into.
no,
I do not want to. I do not want to reignite the don't go hull down with your tanks argument. Which, yeah, go hull down with your tanks, kids. It's not worth it. Yeah. Well, we're almost there, I think. So, Michael Burjolt, I have pronounced that wrong. I'm sure. I'm sorry. Did Hapless? Did you go too far forwards at the beginning? No, I don't think so. I don't think I probably didn't go far enough. I don't think how far. Like we were talking about how much the Chaffee outclassed the Panzer IIIs. So I don't think hanging back would have given any advantage at all.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously my whole plan was built around getting as far forward as I possibly could. But if from the German side I'd have done exactly what you did, I'd have pushed the center. Because again, you're trying to force the other guy to maneuver on you. If you just sit in your deployment zone, you're just ceding the rest
generally
of the
bad
board.
things happen.
Yeah, you just get pinned in your deployment zone, and you're just gonna have a bad time. So
yeah, I mean,
I also agree that you needed to be more conservative than I needed to be because I had that overmatch, so I could afford to bully you. Which was my whole intention, was to bully you and try and force you back into your own deployment in the recce phase.
Yeah, I don't know.
It would have
It's
worked
kind of.
if it wasn't for that damn panther.
Yeah, how would it have gone if there was one extra Chaffee?
It would have been a radically different game, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think it was also it was the shock of you having a panther kind of took the wind out my sails a little bit.
Well, I was expecting to see a Pershing and a Sherman, so I was like, I hope this works.
Yeah, true. That swings both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's
because sometimes knowing. Sorry to interrupt you, but sometimes having the 1-to-1 and knowing what the other guy has leads you more into that like cycle of, well, I know what he has and he knows what I have, so I know what he can do and what he can't do, so he knows that I know, and you just go round and round in circles.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, all I was going to say was it's kind of like an apples and oranges comparison. Like if I hadn't gone as far forward, the same bad things would have happened just closer to my deployment zone, and I would have had even less room to maneuver in. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how much difference it really made, because the Panzer IIIs that went forward all died, and the two Panzer IIIs that survived weren't in positions where they could even do anything, and weren't that useful anyway. even in terms of spotting and things. So yeah, I don't think it really mattered, apart from the fact that it probably slowed you down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that was like, you're in a Panzer III with a 50mm gun, and well, I know it's snowing, but this would be what, May of 1945. It's like you are moral support at best. Like you're not really contributing to the battle in any meaningful way.
Yeah. Which again gets us back to the technicals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just leaves us with Boone, who wants to hear both sides' plan for artillery and how effective it was, and we kind of covered that.
I think we've talked quite a bit about what the drop shorts were up to.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't really have anything huge to add. Call-in time's too long, so harass, use it to shape rather than as like try and be decisive with it.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of effectiveness, I think both of us found that when it dropped on the enemy, it was really effective.
Yeah, I mean, I got a bit lazy towards the end of the game and stopped. Like, even though you were shelling me, I stopped maneuvering and lost like at least an infantry platoon just to my own laziness, letting them sit in a woodblock that was a very obvious artillery target. So like when it hit with a lot of force and did a lot of damage. So yeah, I think it was, and again for what I was using it for, like that kind of shaping bit, I would, well, you tell me, Paplas, do you think it was you obviously didn't want to go there because it was getting shelled, so
yeah,
it was obviously doing what I wanted it to do.
I sent one squad into a woodblock and they got shelled and ran away. And that was like, well, we're not going that way. And then on the other side, I put a platoon into one of the woodblocks on the your right side of the autobahn, and they kind of, took a lot of risks crossing the ground to get to the woodblock, got into the woodblock, got shelled, realized they couldn't go forward, then realized they couldn't go back, and then got killed at the end. So,
yeah, glorious victory.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
So yeah, artillery did kind of.
Yeah, it could, we've talked about how it could have been more effective. If it was more reactive with more TRPs, and maybe if it was split down into sections rather than platoons.
Yeah.
But yeah, always enjoy a bit of artillery.
Well, it's the
outgoing,
and I think it's one of the things as well. Of one thing I think this game was actually really interesting for is, despite the fact it's very much billed as a tank on tank battle, and the infantry and everything seems like kind of garnish. I think it actually showed that kind of combined arms battle really well, because you had the initial recce phase and that like shaping bit. You had the artillery, and like the length of time for call-ins on the artillery meant you had to be very deliberate with it. And then the infantry presented enough of a threat to tanks that you can again use it to shape the battlefield to be like, right, I'm going to put a platoon of infantry in this woodblock, and yes, that makes them a very obvious artillery target, but it also discourages Panthers from just driving past the woodblock. It
also means I am not going anywhere near that woodblock.
Yeah, so it kind of shows, and we didn't unfortunately get to show off any kind of infantry on infantry combat, bar some dicking around in woodblocks with recce teams.
Yeah, it's mostly scout teams getting like mopped up.
Yeah, so but had we got to the point where we were assaulting objectives, I'm sure we would have seen some interesting armor infantry pushing, clearing buildings. So I actually think it ended up being more combined arms than I was expecting it to be, I guess is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of felt like I was on the receiving end of combined arms. I feel like a lot of my stuff was a bit too on fire for most of the game to really.
Stop dying, you cowards!
Yeah, yeah, just wasn't channeling enough for Zap Brannigan really.
Something like that. Eh?
Yeah, but yeah, that's all the questions. So thanks to everybody who asked one, and sorry if you asked one and I've missed it. But I mean, we've been talking for what?
The
1
goods
hour
of 2 hours now.
45, yeah, 2 hours ish now. So hopefully we've covered anything that you might have asked. And yeah, anything else? Stick it in the comments, and we'll see if we can answer it for you. But yeah, again, congratulations on your victory.
Yeah, thank you. And also, actually, congratulations on your DLC, which is far more impressive.
Yes,
than...
thanks very much. It took a little bit longer than this, but yeah, it looks like it's been gone. It looks like it's going down really well. So,
well, I've played one of the campaigns and I'm really enjoying it. So, yeah.
Oh, did you get to the last mission? The last I saw you were on mission 3.
I unfortunately had to wrap up the start of the next mission, so the QRF is imminent but not yet arrived.
Okay.
So I'll hopefully try and finish it tomorrow. So I'll let you know.
That's awesome.
It's I'll be in the comments of the video, so I will let everyone else know too. I'll be like, this is a very good mission. But I'm enjoying it so far. It's cool, and I think you hit exactly what you wanted to hit in terms of like that kind of smaller scale missions, but still, worthwhile. Because I know sometimes with a combat mission, I think it's one of those games that unfortunately is better the bigger you go. If that makes sense. It's kind of like Arma.
It can get very swingy at low levels.
Yeah.
That's what the Special Forces campaign is about. You have 12 guys and 4 vehicles. You cannot afford to take any losses. But yeah, glad you're enjoying it.
No, I am. So congratulations on getting your own DLC in the game. Yeah. So it's not enough to just be the biggest YouTuber. You also now have to start dropping DLC.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the direction going forward.
Taking it over, man. We're going to be running the place. And yeah, so that's all. Thanks for the game. It was a good and interesting game. And to be fair, again, wish I had recorded it, but there were quite a few times where, like, at no point was I kind of sitting there being like, "Oh yeah." Well, towards the end, obviously, I was fairly sure because we were talking on Discord while playing.
Yeah. I'm going to disengage now, so have fun.
Yeah. So it was that, but for most of certainly the first half of the game, I thought it was anyone's game. It never really got to it wasn't until that big attack on my left, your right was turned back. After that, I was like, okay, I'm fairly confident.
Yeah, there's nothing like knocking out like 5 or 6 enemy tanks in a couple of turns.
Maybe this is the point. I'll send you a picture of my kill board if I can find it, or I might have sent it to you already. Throw it up on the screen to see what people think of my scribbles. But
patented Bill Hardenberger bloodboard.
But no, thanks for the game. I really enjoyed it. Congratulations on the DLC. And yeah, I feel like we've probably hit a lot of points, I'm sure. And we'll be in the comment. I'll be in the comments. You'll be in the comments. We'll pick up any others that get missed.
Yeah, and thanks for coming on. I should do more of these more often, really.
Yeah, we'll
get both sides of the story.
Definitely. Well, maybe we'll do that Cold War rematch or that Tiger 2 rematch, and we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see how it pans out.
We'll see how it pans out. Alright, mate. I'll chat to you in a bit.
Yeah, I'll see you later, man. Thanks
Bye.
again.